Can I ask you something? You've been teaching for how many years? 10? 15? Maybe even more than that? Do you have a master's degree? I bet you probably do. You've worked hard for kids that nobody else believed in. You've rewritten lesson plans, maybe even in your mind at 10 o'clock at night because you can't get to sleep and you knew something just wasn't right. You know how to teach. So why does your classroom feel so off sometimes? Well, that's the question this whole episode is really going to be about. Hey friends, welcome to Enjoy Teaching Again, the podcast for teachers who love the work but need a little spark to bring the joy back. I'm your host, Elizabeth Peterson, classroom teacher, arts integration specialist, and passionate educator of over 25 years. If you're overwhelmed by behaviors, disengaged students, and long, exhausting days, you are not alone. But together, we can turn things around and you can teach with confidence and purpose again. So locate that cold coffee of yours, find your favorite pen, I know you have one, and let's dive in. It's time to get inspired and enjoy teaching again. So you've been hearing about the classroom reset for a while maybe, but you're wondering, okay, what exactly is inside the classroom reset? So let me take a moment to show you exactly what you get inside the classroom reset. First, we start with you, because resetting your classroom starts with resetting your mindset. And just like everything else at the Inspired Classroom, we want this to be teacher-centered. And then we're going to move into some really great proactive behavior strategies. We're going to look at creative engagement tools, simple, I said, SEL integration, and classroom culture shifts that actually stick. This is no fluff around here and no stress. Instead, you're going to get done for you templates. We're going to give you strategies that will work for your classroom, your students, your content, your teaching style. You're going to have access to a private teacher community, a lot of bonus trainings on all the things that you really need inside your classroom, monthly teacher check-ins, and here's probably the best part, personalized support. That means you can ask me questions anytime and I will give you direct answers that go with what your personalized needs are inside your classroom. This isn't just theory. I'm not sitting with a bunch of people around a conference table trying to figure out what the best sequence of a curriculum is going to be. I'm in the classroom right now too. I know what works and what doesn't. I speak with teachers all the time, and I've been doing this for over 27 years now. Over 20 of those years specifically working with other teachers in workshops and courses and retreats. So what I've done is I've brought the best of what I've taught over the last 20 years with specifically teachers and created a reset framework that will work in your classroom. This is practical, it's classroom tested, and it's from someone who's still teaching in the classroom myself. If you're serious about making a shift, I want you to go look at what's inside. Go to theinspiredclassroom.com/reset because you deserve a framework and the support that actually helps you. Okay, so here's what I want to talk to you about today, and I want to talk about it honestly, because I think it's one of the most important things that I can say to a seasoned teacher like you right now. Now, I am still in the classroom. You probably know that. I'm in it right now, actually, this week still, because I still have a couple more weeks of school. We don't go for summer break until June 22nd. So I'm in it with real students right in front of me. And what I'm seeing, what I'm watching in kids' nervous systems and their behavior patterns and their emotional responses this year is just so different than what I'm seeing even 5 years ago, let alone 7, 10, 15 years ago. It is a completely different picture of a student, right? And I think a lot of teachers are carrying something that, hey, they just haven't been given the language for yet. and they're blaming themselves for a problem that really isn't their own. So let's talk about this. The first thing I want you to understand is this. The emotional regulation gap in today's students, it's real and it's measurable compared to what we've seen in the past, right? And it's not something that you have just failed to prevent. Let me tell you what I mean by that, because I don't want this to sound like a statistic. I want it to sound like what I actually see when I'm going into school on any given morning. I have students right now who just cannot transition well from one activity to the next without their nervous systems going into some version of like a high alert. Not because they're being defiant, and it's not always because they're choosing to be difficult. Notice I said always, but because the part of their brain that says, this is safe, this is okay, I can handle this change, that part is underdeveloped in a way that is genuinely new for this day and age. I have a student who reads a minor social interaction, like somebody bumping into them in the hallway or somebody using a slightly sharper tone, as a threat, like a real physical nervous system level threat. And then he responds accordingly. I've had a student recently who shut down completely the moment work feels hard. Not dramatically, just gone, checked out, unreachable, head on the desk. There's just nothing that's going to work for him. And here is what I want you to hear. These are not always discipline problems. They are actually regulation problems. And regulation problems, they require a completely different response than what most of us were trained to give. When you redirect a dysregulated student, when you apply a consequence, when you move their clip on the behavior chart, when you send them to the hall, what you're doing, and this could be unintentional, is you're treating a regulation problem like it's a compliance problem. And the reason it keeps not working is because those are two different things, completely different things. Your instincts are right. You can feel that something is off, right? Something is obviously going wrong in front of you, but you keep trying the things that used to work and it keeps not working. And maybe you've even started to wonder if you're the problem. Let me tell you, you are not the problem. It's that the tool, the choice that you are feeling you need to make is not the right choice for that situation. Here's the second thing that I'm watching in my very own classroom right now. That is about belonging. Belonging just needs to be more urgent than ever. And at the same time, it's harder to build. Let me try and illustrate what I mean. Students who do not feel like they belong somewhere, they tend to not behave. And that has always been true, but the conditions that used to build belonging naturally, like stable home environments, consistent community, secure attachment relationships, those are less reliable for more and more students than they used to be. I'm sure you have seen that in your own students that you have, right? I'm not saying this to be dramatic. I'm saying this because it can change what your job actually is as their teacher, right? You're not just managing student behavior anymore. You're being asked to build the belonging that some of your students are arriving without having. And nobody told you that. Nobody trained us for that. Nobody said, hey, by the way, the thing you're going to need to do this year is build a foundation of emotional safety so deep that your students' nervous systems can actually settle enough to learn. That is an enormous ask. And maybe you have heard little bits and pieces of that type of thing through, someone saying you need to build relationships, use those first 6 weeks of school to really build a community and make a safe environment for your students. But maybe you don't know exactly what that means and what you actually need to do to create that. And it's possible that you've been trying to meet that with some of your seemingly tried and true strategies that really get at behavior and not at belonging. And I say this with so much love and care because I know that you're struggling. And because I've did it too. I've stood in front of a class of kids who needed belonging and handed them a consequence ladder, right? Because that's what the system handed me. That's what I grew up feeling. That's what I needed to do. And here's the shift that I want to offer you today. Belonging isn't something that you manage. It's something that you build, and you build it intentionally, and you build it specifically with a framework underneath it. Not just good intentions and a warm classroom bulletin board, although those things are good, those are not going to build the type of belonging that our students really need. If you haven't yet heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I want you to check it out. And I actually have a YouTube video that speaks specifically to teaching and how this hierarchy of needs works within our own classrooms. So I'm going to link that in the show notes. It's totally worth you checking that out because it really does help to explain how the sense of safety that some of the students come in not having can really affect them to the point where they're just simply not ready to learn, and how we can, kind of instill that innate sense of safety and belonging in our classrooms to really build that. Because the good news is you already have the instincts for this. What you need is just a little bit of the architecture, a little of that framework that will help you to really see what you need to see and then build what you need to build. Now, before I get into the third thing that I'm watching right in front of my face in my classroom, I want to make sure you have something in your hand, because if this is landing for you, if you're nodding along and thinking, yes, this is exactly what's happening in my room too, and I don't know what to do with it, I want you to have a next real step. I have a free guide. It's called the Reset Roadmap, and it walks you through my entire reset framework. It gives all 5 steps in one place with a podcast episode linked to all the different steps so that you can go as deep as you want on any piece of it. It's not a list of strategies. It's the actual framework underneath the strategies, that architecture that I was kind of talking about, and it's completely free. I want you to go grab it after you finish listening to this. It's at theinspiredclassroom.com/roadmap. And of course, I'll link it in the show notes as well. Okay. All right. Now let's get back to the third thing. It's that the classroom you were trained to teach in, it doesn't actually exist anymore. This one, really, I want you to sit with this for a moment, because the strategies that you were probably trained on, the ones that used to work, the ones that you reached for instinctively because they worked before, they were designed for a totally different emotional landscape than the one that your students are living in right now. This is not a failure on your part. That is a mismatch between the tools that you were given and then the reality that you're standing in. Think about it this way. You were trained to drive a specific kind of road, right? And you got really good at it, really good. You knew the curves, you knew the conditions, you knew how to read the terrain. And then at some point, gradually, without anybody really making any announcement about it, the road changed. The surface is different. The conditions are different. The car that handled perfectly on the old road is pulling to one side or the other. And you've been holding on to that steering wheel, telling yourself that you just need to be a better driver. But it was never about being a better driver. It's about recognizing that the road has changed and that you need some updated equipment for the terrain that you are now on. In your experience, it's not a liability here. Your experience is the foundation. You know how to read a room. You know how to build relationships. You know how to stay with a kid through the hard parts. Your instincts took years to build, and they are absolutely relevant to today's classroom. So what's outdated here is not you. What's outdated is maybe the behavior management approach that you were handed, because it was built for a different time with different kids with different needs. And here's what I want to say about this. I'm going to say it really specifically. The answer is not to add more strategies on top of the ones that aren't working. The answer is actually to go back to the core of what has always worked in education. And that is real relationships, real belonging, real creative engagement. Remember when we had the freedom to actually do that a lot? And to get back to those things and build a framework around it that actually holds for today's students. And that's what a reset is built on. Not a new program, not the next initiative. Oh gosh, no. A return to what works with a structure that can hold it in place even on the hardest days of the school year. I want to take a moment to talk about you, not your classroom, but you, because you are the most important part of your classroom. And here's what I've noticed with teachers that I've worked with, not just my colleagues, but with the hundreds and hundreds of teachers I've worked with inside of my courses and my retreats and my workshops. And honestly, I've noticed it in myself at certain points in my career as well. When the classroom is hard, when student behavior feels relentless and the strategies that I'm trying aren't sticking and the exhaustion starts to set in, there's this quiet erosion that starts to happen. It's not dramatic. It's not sudden or out of the blue. It's just a slow, incremental pulling away from the teacher that you know yourself to be. That creative teacher, the one who wants to connect with his or her students, the one who has ideas and maybe even stayed late to figure out how to reach that kid in the back row that wouldn't participate. You know that teacher, right? That teacher's still there in you. Maybe she's been quiet lately because survival doesn't leave much room for her anymore. And I want to say this directly to you. That teacher, the one who has 10, 15, 20 plus years of kids behind her, who has learned how to read a room and hold a class and find the kid inside the behavior, she's not obsolete. And she's not the problem either. She's actually exactly what today's students need. Not a different teacher, not a teacher with less experience and more energy, although more energy would be fantastic, wouldn't it? Not the version of you from 10 years ago who hadn't yet learned what hard years can teach you. Instead, you, right now, with all of it. And what she needs, what you need, is not to start over, but to reset to the core of what works with a structure built for the classroom you're actually in right now. Now on Friday, I'm going to get even more deep into this. I'm going to share some specific things that I'm watching in my own classroom right now. And I think you're going to recognize immediately some of the things that I'll share. So come back for that one, okay? And as for you, I want you to definitely go check out what a reset is and what it might be for you. So go to theinspiredclassroom.com/roadmap. That's where you can download my free roadmap resource that will give you the entire reset framework. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you next time. I hope this episode inspired you, encouraged you, or gave you a fresh idea to try. And if so, I would love for you to take a screenshot and text it to one of your teaching buddies. I'm so grateful that you landed here with me today, and it would mean the world to me if you would leave me a review over on Apple Podcast. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll catch you on the next episode. This is Elizabeth Peterson reminding you to get inspired so you can be inspiring to your students and enjoy teaching again.